Sarah Martinez had always been different. While other girls her age played with dolls, she spent hours in her grandfather's garage learning to take apart and reassemble old rifles. Her grandfather, a Vietnam War veteran, recognized something special in his granddaughter's steady hands and sharp eyes. "You've got the gift, Mija," he would tell her as she hit target after target at the local shooting range. But having good aim isn't everything. A real marksman needs patience, discipline, and the ability to stay calm when everything around them is falling apart. Sarah took those words to heart. She joined her high school shooting team and dominated every competition. College scouts noticed her, but Sarah had bigger dreams. She wanted to serve her country, just like her grandfather had done decades before. When Sarah walked into the military recruitment office at 18, the sergeant behind the desk looked her up and down with obvious doubt. She was petite, barely 5 feet 3 inches tall, with long dark hair tied back in a simple ponytail. She didn't look like the typical soldier material. "What makes you think you can handle military life?" the recruiter asked, leaning back in his chair. Sarah placed her shooting competition trophies on his desk one by one. 15 gold medals from state and national competitions. The sergeant's eyebrows rose higher with each trophy. "I want to be a sniper," Sarah said simply. The recruiter chuckled. "Young lady, being a sniper isn't just about hitting targets at a carnival. It's about survival, physical strength, and mental toughness that most people don't possess." "Then test me," Sarah replied, her voice steady and confident. Basic training was brutal. Sarah's drill sergeant, a mountain of a man named Sergeant Wilson, seemed to take special pleasure in making her life difficult. He assigned her extra duties, made her carry heavier packs, and constantly questioned whether she belonged in the army. "Martinez," he would shout during morning runs, "this isn't summer camp. If you can't keep up, there's the door." But Sarah never complained. While other recruits grumbled about the harsh treatment, she focused on proving herself. She completed every obstacle course, passed every physical test, and maintained the highest marksmanship scores in her unit. Her fellow soldiers had mixed reactions to her presence. Some respected her abilities, while others whispered behind her back that she was only there to fill some diversity quota. The worst comments came from Jake Morrison, a loudmouthed recruit from Texas who seemed to think women had no place in combat roles. "Wait until she faces real combat," Jake would tell anyone who would listen. "She'll be crying for her mommy within 5 minutes." Sarah heard every word but chose not to respond. She had learned from her grandfather that actions spoke louder than words. Instead of arguing, she focused on her training with laser-like intensity. Sniper school was even more challenging than basic training. Only the top marksmen from each unit were selected, and Sarah was the only woman in her class of 24 candidates. The instructors, all seasoned veterans with years of combat experience, made it clear that they expected most candidates to wash out within the first month. The course covered everything from advanced ballistics and wind reading to camouflage techniques and survival skills. Students learned to remain motionless for hours, to calculate bullet drop over extreme distances, and to make life or death decisions in split seconds. Sarah excelled in every area. While her male counterparts struggled with the patience required for long-range observation, she could lie still in uncomfortable positions for hours without moving. Her small frame, which some saw as a disadvantage, actually helped her hide in spaces where larger soldiers couldn't fit. The final test of sniper school was a live-fire exercise in a simulated combat environment. Each student had to successfully engage targets at distances ranging from 500 to 1,200 yards while under pressure. They had only one chance to pass. When Sarah's turn came, she could feel the eyes of her instructors and fellow students watching her every move. Some were hoping she would succeed, but others were clearly waiting for her to fail. She settled into position behind her rifle, controlled her breathing, and focused on the distant target. The first shot was perfect. The second shot was even better. By the time she finished the course, Sarah had achieved the highest score in her class. The silence that followed was deafening. Then slowly her instructors began to clap. "Outstanding work, Martinez," said Master Sergeant Rodriguez, the chief instructor. "That's some of the finest shooting I've seen in 20 years of teaching this course." But even with her success in sniper school, Sarah faced skepticism when she was assigned to her first unit. The 75th Ranger Regiment was an elite force, and many of the soldiers questioned whether she could handle the physical and mental demands of special operations. Captain James Mitchell. Her commanding officer was a fair man but practical. He had seen too many soldiers, both male and female, who looked good on paper but couldn't perform under pressure. He decided to give Sarah a chance, but he would be watching her closely. "I don't care if you're the best shot in the army," he told her during their first meeting. "Out there, your teammates' lives depend on your ability to stay calm and do your job. One mistake, one moment of hesitation, and good soldiers die." Sarah understood the weight of that responsibility. Every night she practiced her shooting, studied terrain maps, and maintained her equipment. She knew that she wasn't just representing herself anymore. She was representing every woman who wanted to serve in combat roles. Her first deployment came sooner than expected. Intelligence reports indicated increased terrorist activity in a mountainous region overseas, and Sarah's unit was tasked with conducting reconnaissance and elimination missions. As they prepared for deployment, the jokes and skeptical comments from some of her teammates continued. "I hope she doesn't slow us down," she overheard one soldier saying. "Maybe we should pack extra tissues for when she starts crying," another added with a laugh. Sarah packed her gear methodically, checking and double-checking every piece of equipment. Her rifle, a custom-built weapon that had become like an extension of herself, was cleaned and zeroed perfectly. She had spent countless hours with this rifle, learning its characteristics and capabilities. As the transport plane lifted off, carrying them toward their deployment zone, Sarah stared out the window at the landscape below. She thought about her grandfather's words about staying calm when everything was falling apart. She had trained for this moment her entire life, but she knew that real combat would test her in ways that no training exercise ever could. The other soldiers in the unit were experienced warriors, men who had seen combat in some of the world's most dangerous places. They knew how to work together as a team, and Sarah would need to prove that she could fit into that team dynamic while performing her specialized role as a sniper. The mission briefing revealed that they would be operating in hostile territory, where enemy snipers and improvised explosive devices posed constant threats. Sarah's job would be to provide overwatch for her teammates, eliminating enemy threats before they could harm friendly forces. As they approached their destination, Sarah felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement. This was what she had trained for, what she had dreamed about since she was a child, learning to shoot in her grandfather's garage. Soon she would have the chance to prove that she belonged among these elite soldiers. The forward operating base was a collection of concrete barriers, sandbags, and temporary structures surrounded by razor wire. Sarah had seen pictures of similar bases, but being there in person was different. The smell of diesel fuel, dust, and sweat hung in the air. Helicopters landed and took off constantly, carrying supplies and personnel to various locations throughout the region. Sarah was assigned to a team led by Staff Sergeant Marcus Thompson, a 12-year veteran with 3 combat deployments under his belt. Thompson was known for his no-nonsense approach and his ability to bring his soldiers home alive. When he first met Sarah, he looked her up and down with the same skeptical expression she had grown accustomed to seeing. "So you're the sniper everyone's been talking about," Thompson said. "I've read your file. Impressive shooting scores, but this isn't a shooting range. Out here, the targets shoot back." Sarah nodded respectfully. "I understand, Staff Sergeant. I'm ready to do my job." Thompson's team consisted of 6 other soldiers, all experienced combat veterans. There was Rodriguez, the team medic who had saved countless lives during his previous deployments. Jenkins handled communications and was known for his ability to call in air support when things got desperate. Walsh was their explosive ordnance disposal specialist, the man who dealt with the improvised bombs that were a constant threat in this region. The other team members included Kowalski, a machine gunner whose steady fire had covered many retreats, and Davis, a young soldier on his second deployment who served as the team's designated marksman. Finally, there was Peterson, their intelligence specialist who analyzed enemy movements and identified high-value targets. During their first team meeting, Thompson laid out their mission parameters. They would be conducting long-range reconnaissance patrols, gathering intelligence on enemy movements, and eliminating high-value targets when the opportunity presented itself. The work would be dangerous, often requiring them to operate for days in enemy territory with no immediate backup available. "We've been working together for 8 months," Thompson told Sarah. "We know each other's strengths and weaknesses. We trust each other with our lives. You're the new element in this equation, and frankly, Some of the guys have concerns about how you'll perform under pressure. Sarah could see the doubt in several team members' eyes. Davis, in particular, seemed resentful of her presence. As the team's current designated marksman, he probably felt that Sarah's arrival reflected poorly on his own abilities. "I can't ask you to trust me until I've proven myself," Sarah replied, "but I can promise you that I'll do everything in my power to keep this team safe and complete our mission successfully." Thompson nodded approvingly. "Fair enough. We'll start with some local patrols to get you acclimated to the area. The terrain here is unlike anything you've trained on. The elevation changes affect bullet trajectory, and the weather can shift from blazing hot to freezing cold within hours." Their first patrol was a routine reconnaissance mission to observe a suspected enemy supply route. Sarah carried her rifle and additional equipment, including a spotting scope, rangefinder, and communications gear. The total weight of her pack was over 60 pounds, but she had trained extensively with heavy loads and was determined not to slow down her teammates. The patrol route took them through rugged mountain terrain, following narrow paths that had been used by local inhabitants for centuries. The landscape was beautiful but unforgiving, with steep cliffs and loose rocks that could easily cause a serious fall. Sarah concentrated on maintaining her footing while staying alert for potential threats. After 6 hours of hiking, they reached their observation position on a rocky outcropping that provided excellent visibility over the valley below. Thompson assigned Sarah and Davis to work together, with Davis serving as her spotter while she maintained overwatch through her rifle scope. The arrangement was tense from the beginning. Davis clearly resented having to work with Sarah, and he made little effort to hide his feelings. When she asked for range estimates to potential target locations, he provided minimal information. When she requested wind speed and direction readings, he gave reluctant, often inaccurate responses. "Look," Davis finally said during a quiet moment, "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this isn't some feminist statement. People die out here because someone wasn't qualified to do their job." Sarah kept her eye pressed to her rifle scope, watching the valley below for any signs of enemy activity. "I'm not here to make a statement," she replied calmly. "I'm here to do my job, same as you." "Your job is to follow orders and try not to get anyone killed," Davis shot back. "My job is to keep this team alive, and having someone untested in a critical position makes that harder." Before Sarah could respond, Rodriguez's voice crackled through their radio headsets. "Movement in the valley, 2 o'clock from our position. Looks like a small convoy." Sarah shifted her rifle to observe the reported location. Through her scope, she could see 3 vehicles moving along the road that wound through the valley floor. The distance was approximately 800 yards, well within her effective range, but a challenging shot due to the elevation difference and unpredictable wind patterns in the mountains. "I count 12 individuals," she reported quietly into her radio. "Armed, but I can't determine if they're hostile or local civilians." Thompson's voice came back immediately. "Maintain observation. Do not engage unless fired upon. We're here to watch and report, not start a firefight." For the next 20 minutes, Sarah tracked the convoy through her scope, while Davis provided range and wind information with obvious reluctance. The vehicles stopped at several locations, and armed men got out to examine the road and surrounding terrain. Their behavior suggested they were either looking for something specific or conducting reconnaissance of their own. Suddenly, one of the men in the convoy pointed directly towards Sarah's position. Within seconds, the entire group was taking cover behind their vehicles and bringing weapons to bear on the mountainside where her team was hidden. "They've spotted us," Thompson said over the radio. "Prepare for contact." The first enemy shots echoed across the valley, bullets striking the rocks near their position and sending chips of stone flying in all directions. Sarah remained calm, adjusting her scope for the range and wind conditions while her teammates returned fire with their assault rifles. "Martinez, can you eliminate the spotter who identified our position?" Thompson asked. Sarah had already located the target through her scope. The man was partially concealed behind one of the vehicles, but she could see enough of his torso to make an accurate shot. The distance was challenging and the wind was gusting unpredictably, but it was well within her capabilities. "Target acquired," she replied, requesting permission to engage. "You're cleared hot. Take the shot." Sarah controlled her breathing, accounting for the wind speed and bullet drop over the 800-yard distance. She had made similar shots hundreds of times during training, but this was different. This was a human being in her crosshairs. not a paper target or steel silhouette. Her grandfather's words echoed in her mind. Stay calm when everything around you is falling apart. The gunfire from her teammates and the enemy continued to echo across the valley, but Sarah blocked out all distractions and focused solely on her target. She squeezed the trigger smoothly, following through with her shot as she had been trained. The bullet traveled across the valley in less than a second, striking the target center mass. The enemy spotter dropped immediately, his rifle clattering against the rocky ground. Good shot, Thompson said over the radio. Target eliminated. But the engagement was far from over. The remaining enemy fighters had taken better cover and were directing increasingly accurate fire toward the team's position. Several bullets struck dangerously close to Sarah and Davis, forcing them to shift to a more protected location. We need to move, Thompson decided. This position is compromised and we don't have the firepower to engage a force this size effectively. As the team prepared to withdraw from their observation post, Sarah noticed movement on a ridgeline to their east. Through her scope, she could see additional enemy fighters moving to flank their position. If those fighters reached their destination, they would cut off the team's primary escape route. New contacts on the eastern ridge, she reported. Approximately 6 fighters attempting to flank our position. Thompson cursed under his breath. Distance? Roughly 600 yards in closing. They'll reach the trail junction in about 5 minutes. The team leader quickly assessed their tactical situation. They were outnumbered and would soon be surrounded if they didn't act quickly. Their only chance was to eliminate the flanking force before it could cut off their escape route. Martinez, I need those flankers eliminated. Can you do it? Sarah was already adjusting her scope for the new target area. The shots would be difficult due to the moving targets and the need for rapid engagement, but she was confident in her abilities. Affirmative. Give me 30 seconds. As her teammates provided covering fire toward the original enemy position, Sarah focused on the flanking force moving along the eastern ridge. The first target was a man carrying what appeared to be a rocket-propelled grenade launcher, a weapon that could devastate their small team if deployed effectively. Her first shot struck the RPG gunner in the chest, dropping him instantly. The weapon tumbled down the rocky slope, disappearing into a crevice between 2 boulders. Her second shot eliminated another flanker, who was attempting to set up a machine gun position. The remaining flankers realized they were being engaged by a sniper and began moving erratically, making themselves more difficult targets. But Sarah had trained extensively for exactly this type of scenario. She led her targets, accounting for their movement and the challenging terrain. Her third and fourth shots found their marks, eliminating 2 more flankers and effectively neutralizing the threat to their escape route. The surviving enemy fighters retreated back down the ridge, abandoning their attempt to surround the American team. The successful elimination of the flanking force gave Thompson's team the opening they needed to execute a tactical withdrawal. Sarah provided covering fire while her teammates moved to alternate positions, then quickly displaced to catch up with them as they made their way down the mountainside toward their extraction point. Davis, who had been openly skeptical of Sarah's abilities just hours earlier, now looked at her with a mixture of respect and amazement. Those were some incredible shots, he admitted as they moved through the rocky terrain. I've never seen anyone engage multiple moving targets that quickly and accurately. Sarah focused on maintaining her pace with the team while scanning the surrounding terrain for additional threats. It's what I trained for, she replied simply. Just doing my job. When they reached their extraction point 3 hours later, Thompson gathered his team for a debrief. The mission had been successful in gathering intelligence about enemy movements in the valley, and Sarah's actions had prevented what could have been a catastrophic ambush. Martinez performed exceptionally well today, Thompson reported to their commanding officer over the radio. Her shooting was precise and timely. She definitely saved lives out there. Word of Sarah's performance spread quickly throughout the forward operating base. Other soldiers who had previously dismissed her as an untested rookie began to view her differently. The skeptical comments and jokes gradually disappeared, replaced by nods of acknowledgement when she passed by. However, not everyone was impressed by her success. A few soldiers, particularly those who had been vocal about their opposition to women in combat roles, remained convinced that her performance was just beginner's luck. They predicted that she would crack under pressure during a more intense engagement. Jake Morrison, the same soldier who had doubted her during basic training and had somehow ended up at the same base, was among the most vocal critics. One good day doesn't make her a real soldier, he told anyone who would listen. Wait until she faces a serious firefight. Then we'll see what she's really made of. Sarah ignored the negative comments and focused on preparing for her next mission. Thompson's team had been assigned to conduct a high-priority target elimination mission based on intelligence gathered from their recent reconnaissance. A high-ranking enemy commander was reportedly traveling through their area of operations, and eliminating him could significantly disrupt terrorist activities in the region. The target was expected to travel in a convoy of 3 vehicles along a specific route at a predetermined time. Sarah's role would be to eliminate the target, while her teammates provided security and covered their withdrawal. It was the type of mission that could make or break a sniper's career. Intelligence reports indicated that the enemy commander was extremely cautious and well protected. He varied his routes and timing to avoid predictable patterns, and his security detail consisted of experienced fighters armed with modern weapons. Previous attempts to eliminate this target had failed, resulting in the loss of several American and Allied personnel. Thompson briefed his team on the mission parameters during a secure meeting in the base's operations center. The target was a man known only by the codename Scorpion, believed to be responsible for planning attacks that had killed dozens of American soldiers and hundreds of civilians over the past 2 years. This guy is smart and paranoid, Thompson explained, pointing to aerial photographs of the expected travel route. He never uses the same route twice in a row, and he's got a security detail that knows their business. Intelligence suggests he'll be traveling through Sector 7 sometime between 1400 and 1600 hours tomorrow. The planned ambush site was a narrow section of road that passed through a small valley, with elevated positions on both sides that would provide excellent fields of fire. Sarah would be positioned on the northern ridge, approximately 400 yards from the road, while the rest of the team established security positions to prevent enemy reinforcements from interfering with the operation. The shot won't be technically difficult, Thompson told Sarah. The challenge will be identifying the correct target among multiple vehicles and personnel, then making the shot before his security team can react. Sarah studied the target photographs and intelligence reports late into the night. Scorpion was a middle-aged man of average height and build, with no particularly distinctive features that would make him easy to identify at a distance. Intelligence suggested that he often used body doubles to confuse potential assassins, making positive identification even more challenging. The team deployed to their positions before dawn, moving through the darkness to avoid detection by enemy patrols known to operate in the area. Sarah's position on the northern ridge provided excellent visibility over the entire valley, but it also left her somewhat isolated from her teammates. Davis accompanied her as her spotter, and their working relationship had improved dramatically since their first mission together. He now provided accurate range and wind information without hesitation, and he had begun to trust Sarah's judgment about target selection and engagement timing. Wind is steady at about 5 miles per hour from the west, Davis reported as they settled into their position. Temperature is rising, which might affect your bullet trajectory if we're out here for several hours. Sarah made the necessary adjustments to her scope and settled in to wait. Sniper work required immense patience, and she had learned to remain comfortable in the same position for hours without moving unnecessarily. Her grandfather had taught her that patience was often more important than marksmanship skill. At 13:47 hours, Rodriguez's voice crackled through their radio headsets. Multiple vehicles approaching from the south. Looks like our party might be starting early. Sarah shifted her scope to observe the approaching convoy. 3 black SUVs were moving along the road at moderate speed, with armed men visible in the passenger seats of each vehicle. The convoy's formation and behavior matched intelligence predictions about Scorpion's travel patterns. I count 12 individuals total, Sarah reported. Can't identify the target yet. They're maintaining good spacing between vehicles. As the convoy drew closer, Sarah could see more details through her rifle scope. The men in the vehicles were alert and well-armed, constantly scanning the surrounding terrain for potential threats. Their professional appearance and coordinated movements confirmed that this was likely the convoy they had been waiting for. The vehicles stopped approximately 200 yards from Sarah's position, and several men exited to examine the road ahead. Through her scope, Sarah could see one man who matched Scorpion's general description. but positive identification was still difficult due to the distance and the fact that he was partially concealed behind one of the vehicles. Possible target identified in the second vehicle, Sarah whispered into her radio. Adult male, matches general description, but I need better visibility for positive identification. Thompson's voice came back immediately. Negative. Do not engage until you have positive identification. We can't risk eliminating the wrong person. For several tense minutes, Sarah watched through her scope as the enemy security team continued their road inspection. The man she suspected of being Scorpion remained mostly concealed, making it impossible to get a clear view of his facial features or other identifying characteristics. Then, unexpectedly, the man stepped away from the vehicle and began speaking with his security team. For the first time, Sarah had a clear view of his face through her rifle scope. Comparing what she saw with the intelligence photographs she had memorized, she was confident that she had identified the target. Positive identification confirmed, she reported. Target is standing in the open approximately 380 yards from my position. Are you confident in the identification? Thompson asked. Affirmative. Target matches all physical characteristics and behavioral patterns described in the intelligence briefing. Thompson paused for a moment before responding. You are cleared to engage. Take the shot. Sarah had been mentally preparing for this moment throughout the deployment. She controlled her breathing, accounted for the wind and distance, and placed her crosshairs center mass on the target. The man was standing relatively still, engaged in conversation with his security team. This was different from her previous engagements, which had occurred during active firefights. This was a deliberate, calculated assassination of a specific individual. Sarah thought briefly about the attacks this man had planned, the innocent people who had died because of his actions, and the American soldiers whose lives might be saved by his elimination. She squeezed the trigger smoothly, following through with perfect technique. The bullet struck the target exactly where she had aimed, and the man dropped immediately. For a moment, there was confusion among his security team as they tried to understand what had happened. Then chaos erupted. The security team began firing in all directions, trying to locate the source of the shot that had killed their leader. Some of them began moving toward the ridge where Sarah was positioned, while others attempted to load the target's body into one of the vehicles. Target eliminated, Sarah reported calmly. Security team is responding. Recommend immediate extraction. Thompson's team had anticipated this response and was ready to provide covering fire for Sarah's withdrawal from her position. As enemy fighters began moving up the slope toward her location, her teammates engaged them with automatic weapons fire from their concealed positions. Sarah quickly gathered her equipment and began moving toward the predetermined extraction point. The rocky terrain made movement difficult, especially while carrying her heavy rifle and additional gear, but she had trained extensively for exactly this type of tactical withdrawal. Tavis stayed close behind her, providing security and helping to navigate the treacherous mountain paths. Despite the chaos of the enemy response, he remained calm and focused, proving that he had overcome his initial doubts about working with a female sniper. Nice shooting, he said as they made their way down the mountainside. That was one of the cleanest eliminations I've ever seen. The team successfully extracted from the area without casualties, and intelligence reports later confirmed that Scorpion had indeed been eliminated. The operation was considered a complete success, and Sarah's role in its completion earned recognition from commanders throughout the military hierarchy. 3 weeks after the successful elimination of Scorpion, intelligence analysts discovered disturbing information about increased enemy activity throughout the region. Intercepted communications suggested that terrorist organizations were planning a major offensive against American and Allied forces, potentially involving coordinated attacks on multiple forward operating bases. Sarah's reputation as a highly effective sniper had spread throughout the military command structure, and she found herself being requested for increasingly dangerous and important missions. Her success rate was unprecedented, and commanders trusted her ability to eliminate high-value targets while minimizing collateral damage. However, the constant pressure and the weight of her responsibilities were beginning to take their toll. Each successful mission meant that someone was dead by her hand. And despite her professional training and understanding of the larger strategic picture, Sarah sometimes struggled with the psychological impact of her role. During quiet moments between missions, she would think about the families of the people she had killed, even though her targets were enemy combatants responsible for the deaths of innocent civilians and American soldiers. She couldn't completely disconnect from the human reality of what she was doing. Her grandfather had warned her about this aspect of military service during one of their conversations years earlier. "Taking a life changes you," he had said. "It doesn't matter if it's justified or necessary. Something inside you is different afterward. And you have to learn to live with that change." Thompson, who had become something of a mentor to Sarah, noticed the subtle changes in her demeanor and approached her after a team briefing. As an experienced combat leader, he had seen many soldiers struggle with the psychological challenges of warfare. "How are you holding up?" he asked during a private conversation in his quarters. "You've been carrying a heavy load lately, and I want to make sure you're handling it okay." Sarah appreciated his concern, but she wasn't ready to admit that she was struggling with the emotional aspects of her job. "I'm fine, Staff Sergeant. Just focused on completing our mission successfully." Thompson studied her face carefully. "Martinez, I've been doing this for a long time, and I can see when someone is dealing with more than they want to admit. There's no shame in talking to someone about what you're going through. We have counselors available who understand what combat soldiers experience." "I said I'm fine," Sarah replied, perhaps more sharply than she intended. "I can handle my responsibilities." Thompson nodded, but his expression showed that he wasn't entirely convinced. "Okay, but my door is always open if you change your mind. And remember, taking care of your mental health isn't a sign of weakness. It's part of being a professional soldier." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from the base commander. Intelligence had identified a high-priority target that required immediate attention. A terrorist leader known as the Engineer was reportedly meeting with other senior commanders at a remote compound, approximately 50 miles from their current location. The Engineer was considered one of the most dangerous terrorist leaders in the region, responsible for developing the sophisticated improvised explosive devices that had killed hundreds of American and Allied personnel. His elimination was considered crucial to disrupting enemy operations and preventing future attacks. The mission would require Sarah's team to infiltrate deep into enemy territory, establish an observation post, and wait for the target to appear. Intelligence suggested that the meeting would occur within the next 72 hours, but the exact timing was unknown. "This is a high-risk operation," Thompson explained during the mission briefing. "We'll be operating with no immediate backup available, and extraction could be delayed if enemy forces respond quickly to our presence." The compound where the meeting was expected to take place was located in a valley surrounded by steep mountains, making it naturally defensible but also limiting escape routes for anyone inside. Sarah would need to position herself on one of the surrounding ridges, approximately 600 yards from the main building. The team loaded their equipment and boarded a helicopter for transport to an insertion point several miles from their target area. The flight took them over rugged terrain that looked completely uninhabited, with no signs of roads or permanent settlements visible from the air. Sarah felt the familiar mixture of anticipation and nervousness that preceded dangerous missions. Her equipment was perfectly maintained. Her rifle was zeroed precisely, and she had studied every available piece of intelligence about the target area and the people they expected to encounter. The helicopter touched down briefly in a small clearing surrounded by dense vegetation, allowing the team to quickly unload their gear before the aircraft departed. Within minutes, they were alone in hostile territory, completely dependent on their own skills and preparation for survival. The approach to their target area took nearly 8 hours, as they moved carefully through terrain that could easily conceal enemy patrols or observation posts. Sarah carried her full complement of equipment, including her rifle, ammunition, communications gear, and survival supplies, totaling nearly 70 pounds of additional weight. Despite the challenging conditions, she maintained pace with her teammates and remained alert for potential threats. The months of intensive training and previous combat experience had conditioned her body and mind for exactly this type of operation. They established their observation post on a rocky outcropping that provided excellent visibility over the target compound while offering good concealment from enemy observation. Sarah set up her rifle and began the patient process of long-range surveillance, watching for any signs of activity in the valley below. For the first 24 hours, the compound appeared to be nearly empty. Occasionally, a few guards would move around the perimeter or emerge from the main building, but there was no indication that any high-value targets had arrived for the anticipated meeting. On the second day, several vehicles arrived at the compound, and Sarah could see through her scope that they contained armed men who appeared to be senior leaders rather than ordinary fighters. Their bearing and the deference shown to them by the guards suggested that these might be the targets they were waiting for. Multiple vehicles arrived approximately 30 minutes ago. Sarah reported to Thompson, "I count at least 8 individuals who match the profile for high-value targets, but I haven't been able to positively identify the engineer yet." Thompson acknowledged her report and reminded the team to remain patient. Intelligence operations often required days or even weeks of observation before targets presented themselves for elimination. The key was maintaining alertness and readiness while avoiding detection by enemy security forces. Late on the second day, Sarah observed a man emerging from the main building who matched the general description of the engineer. Intelligence reports described him as a tall, thin man with distinctive facial scarring from an explosive accident years earlier. Through her rifle scope, she could see scarring on the right side of the man's face that seemed consistent with the target description. "Possible target identified," she reported quietly. "Adult male exhibiting physical characteristics consistent with primary target. Requesting permission to move to better observation position for positive identification." "Negative," Thompson replied. "Maintain current position. We can't risk compromising our location for a possible identification." Sarah continued to observe the man through her scope, hoping for a clearer view that would allow for positive identification. The distance was manageable for a shot, but she needed to be absolutely certain that she had identified the correct target before engaging. As evening approached, the man she suspected of being the engineer moved to an open area near the compound's main building, apparently conducting some kind of inspection or meeting with his security personnel. For the first time, Sarah had a clear, unobstructed view of his facial features. Comparing what she observed through her rifle scope with the photographs and descriptions she had memorized, Sarah became increasingly confident that she had correctly identified the engineer. The facial scarring was distinctive and matched exactly what intelligence reports had described. "I have positive identification of the primary target," she reported. "Target is in the open, approximately 580 yards from my position. Clear shot available." Thompson's response came immediately. "Are you certain of the identification?" "Affirmative. Target matches all physical descriptions and exhibits the distinctive facial scarring mentioned in intelligence reports." There was a brief pause before Thompson responded. "You are cleared to engage. Take the shot." Sarah had been mentally preparing for this moment throughout the 2-day surveillance operation. The engineer represented one of the most significant threats to American forces in the region, and his elimination could save countless lives. She controlled her breathing, made final adjustments for wind and distance, and placed her crosshairs on the target. The shot was clean and precise, striking the engineer center mass and dropping him immediately. The reaction from his security team was swift but disorganized, as they scrambled to understand what had happened and locate the source of the shot. "Target eliminated," Sarah reported calmly. "Security team is responding aggressively. Recommend immediate extraction." But as the team prepared to withdraw from their observation post, Sarah noticed something that made her blood run cold. Through her rifle scope, she could see several men moving the engineer's body, and one of them was clearly still alive despite her shot. "Wait," she said urgently into her radio. "I'm seeing movement from the target. He may still be alive." Thompson's voice came back immediately. "Are you certain?" "I saw the impact through my binoculars. It looked like a clean hit." Sarah kept her scope trained on the area where the engineer had fallen. What she saw confused and disturbed her. The man she had shot was clearly dead, but another man who looked remarkably similar was now directing the security response. "I think we may have a body double situation," she reported. "The actual target may still be alive and in the compound." This was exactly the type of scenario that intelligence analysts had warned about. High-value targets like the engineer were known to use body doubles to confuse assassination attempts, and it appeared that Sarah had eliminated the wrong person. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She had killed an innocent person, someone whose only crime was resembling a terrorist leader. Despite her professional training and understanding that mistakes were sometimes unavoidable in combat operations, Sarah felt a crushing weight of guilt and responsibility. "Martinez, we need to move," Thompson said urgently. Enemy forces are converging on our position, and we don't have time for a second engagement. Sarah quickly gathered her equipment and began moving toward the extraction point with her teammates. The rocky terrain made movement difficult, especially while dealing with the emotional impact of what had just happened. She had trained extensively for equipment malfunctions, enemy contact, and tactical emergencies, but no training had prepared her for the psychological impact of killing the wrong person. During the extraction, Davis stayed close to Sarah, providing security and helping her navigate the treacherous mountain paths. He could see that she was struggling with something beyond the normal stress of combat operations. "Hey," he said quietly as they made their way down the mountainside. "Whatever you're thinking about, we can deal with it later. Right now, we need to focus on getting out of here alive." Sarah nodded but said nothing. Her mind was racing with thoughts about the man she had killed, his family, and the consequences of her mistake. She wondered if there had been any way to avoid the error, any additional precautions she could have taken to ensure positive target identification. The helicopter extraction went smoothly, and the team returned to their forward operating base without further incident. However, Sarah's ordeal was far from over. Intelligence analysts would need to debrief her extensively about what she had observed, and military investigators would want to understand exactly how the misidentification had occurred. During the initial debrief, Sarah provided detailed information about everything she had observed during the surveillance operation. She described the physical appearance of both the man she had killed and the person she now believed to be the actual engineer, hoping that the information might prevent future mistakes. "Based on your description and other intelligence we've received, it appears that the engineer does indeed use body doubles," the intelligence analyst explained. "This wasn't a failure on your part, Martinez. The deception was sophisticated and designed specifically to cause exactly this type of confusion." Despite the analyst's reassurance, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she should have been more careful, more thorough in her target identification. She had always prided herself on her precision and attention to detail, and this mistake felt like a fundamental failure of her professional abilities. Thompson found her sitting alone in the base's recreation area later that evening, staring at nothing in particular. As her team leader, he felt responsible for her well-being and wanted to make sure she was processing the day's events in a healthy way. "It's not your fault," he said, sitting down beside her. "Intelligence was flawed, and the enemy used sophisticated deception tactics. Any sniper in your position would have made the same decision based on the information available." Sarah looked up at him with tired eyes. "That doesn't change the fact that an innocent person is dead because of my actions. Someone who was probably forced into the situation and had no choice in the matter." "You're right," Thompson replied. "That doesn't change, and it shouldn't change. The day we stop caring about innocent casualties is the day we become no better than the enemies we're fighting. But you can't let this paralyze you or make you doubt your abilities." "How do you live with it?" Sarah asked. "How do you make peace with the mistakes?" Thompson was quiet for a long moment before responding. "You don't make peace with them. You carry them with you, and you use them to make better decisions in the future. The guilt you're feeling right now is proof that you're still human, still connected to the moral principles that make our mission meaningful." Over the following days, Sarah struggled with her confidence and questioned every aspect of her performance. She spent extra time studying intelligence reports and target photographs, looking for ways to improve her identification procedures and reduce the possibility of future mistakes. Her teammates noticed the change in her demeanor and made efforts to be supportive without being intrusive. They understood that combat stress affected everyone differently, and they respected Sarah's need to process her experiences in her own way. However, the psychological impact of the mistaken killing was affecting Sarah's performance in subtle but significant ways. During training exercises, she hesitated longer before taking shots, second-guessing herself in situations where quick decisions were crucial. Thompson decided to address the issue directly before it could compromise the team's effectiveness during future missions. He arranged for Sarah to speak with a military psychologist who specialized in combat stress and sniper-specific psychological challenges. Dr. Rebecca Chen was a military psychologist who had worked with special operations personnel for over a decade. She understood the unique psychological pressures faced by snipers and other soldiers who were required to make life-and-death decisions in high-stress situations. During her first session with Sarah, Dr. Chen focused on understanding how the recent mission was affecting her mental state and professional confidence. She had worked with many soldiers who struggled with similar issues after combat experiences that didn't go according to plan. "Tell me about what you're thinking when you're behind your rifle now," Dr. Chen asked during one of their conversations. "Has anything changed about how you approach target identification and engagement decisions?" Sarah was initially reluctant to discuss her internal struggles, but she gradually began to open up about her fears and doubts. "I keep second-guessing myself," she admitted. "Every time I look through my scope, I wonder if I'm seeing what I think I'm seeing, or if I'm about to make another mistake." "That level of self-scrutiny can be healthy to a point," Dr. Chen explained. "But when it starts interfering with your ability to perform your duties effectively, it becomes a problem that needs to be addressed." Through several sessions, Dr. Chen helped Sarah understand that perfectionism and self-doubt were common reactions to traumatic combat experiences. She taught Sarah techniques for managing stress and maintaining confidence while still learning from past mistakes. "The goal isn't to forget what happened or to stop caring about the consequences of your actions," Dr. Chen explained. "The goal is to integrate that experience into your professional development without allowing it to paralyze you." Meanwhile, intelligence reports continue to indicate increased enemy activity throughout the region. The successful elimination of several high-value targets had disrupted terrorist operations, but it had also prompted enemy forces to become more aggressive in their attacks against American positions. Sarah's team was called upon for increasingly dangerous missions as commanders sought to maintain pressure on enemy leadership while protecting their own forces. Despite her ongoing psychological struggles, Sarah's technical skills remained exceptional, and her teammates continued to depend on her abilities. During one particularly challenging mission, Thompson's team was tasked with providing overwatch security for a Navy SEAL team, conducting a high-priority raid on a suspected terrorist safehouse. The mission required precise coordination between multiple units and flawless execution under extreme pressure. Sarah's role was to establish a sniper position approximately 800 yards from the target building and eliminate any enemy fighters who attempted to escape or call for reinforcements. The SEAL team would conduct the actual raid, while Sarah's teammates provided additional security around the perimeter. The target building was located in a densely populated area, making the mission significantly more complex than previous operations. Sarah would need to distinguish between enemy combatants and innocent civilians while providing effective fire support for the raiding team. "This is going to be complicated," Thompson explained during the mission briefing. "Positive target identification is absolutely critical. We cannot afford any civilian casualties, and the political consequences of mistakes would be severe." Sarah felt the familiar knot of anxiety in her stomach as she considered the challenges ahead. The recent experience with the body double had shaken her confidence in her ability to make accurate identification decisions under pressure. She worried that her hesitation might compromise the mission or endanger her teammates. The team deployed to their positions under cover of darkness, moving through urban terrain that was significantly different from the mountainous environments where they had conducted most of their previous operations. Sarah established her sniper position on the roof of a building that provided excellent visibility over the target area. Through her rifle scope, she could observe the target building and surrounding streets. The area appeared quiet, with only occasional pedestrians and light vehicle traffic visible. However, intelligence reports suggested that the building contained several high-value targets and their security personnel. At 0330 hours, the SEAL team began their approach to the target building. Sarah watched through her scope as the highly trained operators moved with precision and stealth toward their objective. Their movements were coordinated and professional, reflecting years of training and combat experience. "Overwatch in position," Sarah reported quietly into her radio. "I have clear visibility over the entire target area. No immediate threats observed." The SEAL team leader acknowledged her report and continued with their approach. Sarah remained focused on her assigned sector, scanning for any signs of enemy activity or potential threats to the raiding team. Suddenly, the quiet night erupted in gunfire and explosions as the SEAL team breached the target building. Through her scope, Sarah could see muzzle flashes from inside the structure as the raiders engaged enemy combatants room by room. Within seconds of the raid beginning, enemy fighters began appearing at various positions around the target area. Some emerged from the target building itself, while others appeared to be responding from nearby structures. Sarah's role became critical as she worked to identify and eliminate threats while avoiding harm to friendly forces and civilians. Her first target was a man who appeared on the roof of the target building, carrying what looked like a rocket-propelled grenade launcher. The weapon posed a serious threat to the SEAL team inside the building, and Sarah engaged immediately with a precise shot that eliminated the threat. "Rooftop threat eliminated," she reported. "RPG neutralized." More enemy fighters continued to appear from various positions around the target area. Sarah engaged each target methodically, taking care to positively identify each person as a combatant before firing. The discipline and training she had received throughout her military career served her well as she maintained accuracy under intense pressure. However, the situation became increasingly complex as civilians began appearing on the streets, apparently awakened by the gunfire and seeking to escape the area. Sarah had to constantly adjust her targeting decisions to avoid hitting innocent people, while still providing effective support to the SEAL team. "Multiple civilians in the area," she reported, adjusting engagement procedures to avoid collateral damage. Thompson's voice came back immediately. "Understood. Maintain positive target identification protocols. Better to let a bad guy escape than to hit an innocent person." As the raid continued, Sarah noticed movement in a building adjacent to the target structure. Through her scope, she could see several armed men positioning themselves near windows that provided clear firing positions toward the building where the SEALs were operating. "Enemy fighters in adjacent building," she reported. "They appear to be setting up firing positions to engage friendly forces." The SEAL team leader's voice crackled through the radio. "Can you neutralize them?" "We're taking heavy fire from that direction." Sarah assessed the tactical situation quickly. The enemy fighters were clearly combatants based on their weapons and behavior, but they were positioned near what appeared to be residential areas where civilians might be present. She would need to be extremely careful with her shot placement to avoid collateral damage. "Affirmative," she replied. "I can engage, but I need 30 seconds to ensure clear shooting lanes." Sarah adjusted her position slightly to get a better angle on the adjacent building. Through her scope, she could clearly see 3 armed men preparing to fire on the SEAL team. Their weapons and tactical gear left no doubt about their hostile intent. Her first shot eliminated the enemy fighter closest to the window, dropping him before he could fire on the friendly forces below. Her second shot took out another combatant who was attempting to use a machine gun against the SEAL team. The third enemy fighter realized that he was being engaged by a sniper and attempted to move to a more protected position. Sarah tracked his movement through her scope and eliminated him with a precise shot before he could find adequate cover. "Adjacent building cleared," she reported. 3 enemy combatants eliminated. The SEAL team leader acknowledged her report and continued with their mission inside the target building. Sarah maintained her overwatch position, scanning for additional threats while monitoring the progress of the raid through her radio communications. After approximately 20 minutes of intense fighting, the SEAL team reported that they had secured the target building and captured several high-value individuals. However, their extraction would be complicated by the arrival of enemy reinforcements who were converging on the area from multiple directions. "We've got company coming," the SEAL team leader reported. "Multiple vehicles approaching from the north and east. Looks like they're trying to surround our position." Sarah shifted her scope to observe the approaching vehicles. She could see several trucks loaded with armed men moving toward the target area at high speed. If they reached their destination, they would outnumber the friendly forces and potentially turn a successful raid into a disaster. "I count 4 vehicles with approximately 20 combatants," she reported. "They'll reach the perimeter in about 3 minutes." Thompson's voice came over the radio with urgency in his tone. "Martinez, we need those vehicles stopped before they can establish positions around the target building. Can you engage the lead vehicles?" Sarah was already adjusting her scope for the longer range shots required to engage the approaching convoy. The vehicles were moving quickly, making accurate shots challenging, but she had trained extensively for exactly this type of scenario. "Affirmative," she replied. "Engaging lead vehicle now." Sarah's first shot struck the driver of the lead vehicle, causing it to swerve violently before crashing into a concrete barrier. The crash created chaos among the following vehicles as they tried to avoid the wreckage while maintaining their approach to the target area. Her second shot eliminated the driver of another vehicle, which careened off the road and rolled several times before coming to rest on its side. The remaining vehicles slowed their approach significantly as the occupants realized they were under effective sniper fire. 2 vehicles neutralized, Sarah reported. Remaining hostiles are dismounting and taking cover. The enemy combatants who survived the vehicle crashes quickly organized themselves and began moving toward the target building on foot. They used available cover effectively, making them more difficult targets but also slowing their advance considerably. Sarah continued to engage individual targets as opportunities presented themselves. But the enemy fighters were now aware of her position and began directing return fire toward her location. Bullets began striking the building where she was positioned, forcing her to adjust her position frequently to avoid being hit. "Taking heavy fire at my position," she reported to Thompson. "May need to relocate soon." "Negative," Thompson replied. "SEAL team needs covering fire for their extraction. Hold your position as long as possible." Sarah understood the critical nature of her role in the mission's success. The SEAL team had captured valuable intelligence and several high-priority targets, but they needed time to safely extract from the area. Her continued fire support was essential to preventing enemy forces from overwhelming their position. Despite the incoming fire, Sarah maintained her focus and continued to engage enemy combatants methodically. Each shot was carefully aimed and precisely executed, reflecting the countless hours of training she had completed. Throughout her military career, her psychological struggles from the previous mission seemed to fade away as she focused entirely on protecting her fellow soldiers. The self-doubt and hesitation that had plagued her during training exercises were replaced by the calm professionalism that had made her reputation as an exceptional sniper. "Outstanding shooting, Martinez," the SEAL team leader's voice crackled through her radio. "Your fire support is keeping them off our backs. We're almost ready for extraction." Through her scope, Sarah could see the SEAL team moving toward their extraction point while carrying their captured personnel and recovered intelligence materials. Enemy fighters continued to press their attack, but her accurate fire was disrupting their coordination and preventing them from mounting an effective assault. Suddenly, Sarah noticed movement on a rooftop several hundred yards away. Through her scope, she could see an enemy sniper setting up a rifle and taking aim toward the SEAL team's position. The enemy marksman was well concealed and represented a serious threat to the extraction operation. "Enemy sniper identified," she reported urgently. "Approximately 600 yards northwest of the target building. He's got a clear shot at the extraction point." Sarah quickly adjusted her scope for the longer range engagement while the enemy sniper continued his preparations. This would be one of the most challenging shots of her career, requiring precise calculation of wind, distance, and target movement. The enemy sniper was partially concealed behind a concrete wall, with only his upper torso visible through her scope. Sarah would have only one opportunity to eliminate him before he could fire on the SEAL team. She controlled her breathing, made final adjustments for environmental conditions, and placed her crosshairs on the target. The shot required perfect execution, as any miss would alert the enemy sniper to her position and potentially compromise the entire extraction operation. Sarah squeezed the trigger smoothly, following through with textbook technique. The bullet traveled across the distance in less than a second, striking the enemy sniper precisely where she had aimed. The threat was eliminated before he could fire a single shot at the friendly forces. "Enemy sniper down," she reported with satisfaction. "Extraction route is secure." The successful elimination of the enemy sniper marked the turning point in the engagement. Without effective leadership and faced with accurate fire from Sarah's position, the remaining enemy fighters began to withdraw from the area. The immediate threat to the SEAL team's extraction was neutralized. "Excellent work, Overwatch," the SEAL team leader reported. "We're clear of the target area and moving to pickup point. Mission successful." Sarah maintained her position until she received confirmation that the SEAL team had safely reached their extraction helicopter and departed the area. Only then did she begin her own withdrawal from the rooftop position. Moving carefully to avoid detection by any remaining enemy forces in the area, Thompson and the rest of her team had already reached the extraction point and were waiting for her arrival. As she approached their position, Sarah could see the relief and admiration in their faces. The mission had been a complete success, with multiple high-value targets captured and valuable intelligence recovered. "Outstanding performance out there," Thompson said as they boarded their extraction helicopter. "Your fire support was critical to the mission's success. Those SEALs wouldn't have made it out without your covering fire. During the flight back to their forward operating base, Sarah reflected on the night's events. Despite her recent psychological struggles, she had performed flawlessly when her teammates needed her most. The self-doubt that had plagued her seemed to have disappeared when faced with a genuine life-or-death situation. Davis, who had served as her spotter during previous missions, approached her as they prepared to land. "I've worked with a lot of snipers during my career," he said. "What you did tonight was some of the finest shooting I've ever witnessed. You saved a lot of lives out there." The debriefing that followed the mission was extensive, as intelligence analysts wanted detailed information about everything Sarah had observed during the engagement. Her accurate reporting and precise shooting had contributed significantly to the intelligence value of the operation. Colonel Morrison, the base commander, personally commended Sarah for her performance during the mission. "Martinez, your actions tonight exemplify the highest standards of military professionalism and marksmanship. You should be proud of your contribution to this operation's success." Over the following days, Sarah noticed a significant change in how she was perceived by other soldiers on the base. The skeptical comments and jokes that had once followed her around had completely disappeared, replaced by respectful nods and genuine admiration for her abilities. Jake Morrison, the soldier who had been most vocal in his criticism of women in combat roles, actually approached Sarah to apologize for his previous comments. "I was wrong about you," he admitted. "You've proven that skill and courage aren't determined by gender. You're one hell of a soldier." Sarah accepted his apology graciously, understanding that changing deeply held beliefs often required dramatic evidence. Her consistent performance under pressure had provided that evidence and helped pave the way for other women who wanted to serve in similar roles. Thompson recommended Sarah for several military decorations in recognition of her exceptional service and combat performance. Her actions during multiple missions had saved numerous lives and contributed significantly to the disruption of enemy operations in the region. During her final session with Dr. Chen before the end of her deployment, Sarah reflected on how her experiences had changed her understanding of herself and her capabilities. The psychological struggles following her mistake with the body double had ultimately made her a more thoughtful and careful soldier. "I learned that making mistakes doesn't disqualify you from doing important work," Sarah told the psychologist. "It means you have to learn from those mistakes and use them to become better at what you do." Dr. Chen nodded approvingly. "That's exactly the kind of growth and resilience that separates exceptional soldiers from average ones. You've taken a difficult experience and turned it into a source of strength." As her deployment neared its end, Sarah began to consider her future in the military. She had proven herself as one of the most effective snipers in her unit, and her commanders were encouraging her to apply for advanced training programs that would prepare her for even more challenging assignments. The young woman who had once been laughed at by recruiters and fellow soldiers had become a respected member of an elite military unit. Her success had opened doors for other women and demonstrated that courage, skill, and dedication were not limited by gender. Sarah's grandfather would have been proud of what she had accomplished. She had taken his lessons about patience, discipline, and staying calm under pressure and applied them in the most challenging circumstances imaginable. More importantly, she had maintained her humanity and moral principles even while performing one of the military's most demanding roles. Looking back on her journey from a small-town girl with a talent for shooting to a combat-proven sniper, Sarah realized that the laughter and skepticism she had faced early in her career had actually motivated her to work harder and prove herself more thoroughly than she might have otherwise. The story that began with people laughing at the idea of a female sniper had ended with that same sniper saving the lives of some of the military's most elite soldiers. Sarah Martinez had not only proven her critics wrong, but had also established new standards for excellence in one of the military's most challenging specialties. Her legacy would extend far beyond her personal achievements. Future generations of women would follow the path she had carved, inspired by her example and benefiting from the doors she had opened through her exceptional service and unwavering determination.